Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, could Kim Jong-un be heading to Russia? Moscow says the North Korean leader responded positively to an invitation to come for a key anniversary celebration in May. World leaders and global CEOs kick off the Davos World Economic Forum, stressing the importance of investment and structural reforms to secure further growth. Plus, Korea's defense ministry summons a Japanese embassy official after Tokyo makes fresh territorial claims over Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us, to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, January 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. And we begin with the clearest signal yet that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is planning on visiting Russia in the spring. Giving his annual news conference on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Kim gave a positive response to President Vladimir Putin's invitation. Lavrov added that around 20 heads of state, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, have confirmed their attendance for Russia's World War II Victory Day celebrations on May 9th. Now, South Korean President Park Geun-hye has also been invited, but no official word yet on whether she plans to travel to Moscow. If Kim Jong-un goes, it would be his first overseas trip since coming to power in 2011. It would also mark the first time a North Korean leader has not chosen China as his first overseas destination. And staying with North Korea, and reports say the regime has a strong desire to hold talks with the United States. Pyongyang had said earlier this month that it was keen to talk, but it's thought the North wants something concrete sorted out sooner rather than later, especially as Washington's annual military drills with Seoul are fast approaching. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has reiterated its readiness to mend fences with the United States. The Chosun Shinbo, a pro-North Korea newspaper based in Japan, claimed Wednesday that Pyongyang's recent proposal to Washington should not be taken as a mere charm offensive. Earlier this month, Pyongyang proposed to temporarily suspend its nuclear tests if Washington canceled its joint military drills with Seoul. That proposal was flatly rejected by the U.S. The paper said North Korea does not want talks for talk's sake, but to make serious progress in their dialogue. To do that, it said the two sides must come to the negotiating table without any military threats. But on the same day, in a separate paper, North Korea made more threats directed at the U.S. Through the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper, Pyongyang said it will launch defensive counteractions if Seoul and Washington conduct joint drills in March as planned. The paper urged the U.S. to halt its rehearsal for an invasion, calling it a key precondition to easing inter-Korean tensions. While Pyongyang seems to be testing the waters with Washington, some analysts say a bilateral meeting between the two Koreas could open a path to engagement. But that would have to come after North Korea gave a much-awaited response to South Korea's offer for talks made last month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Japan has yet again staked its territorial claim on Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. Now, it's a common occurrence, but what's unusual this time is that Tokyo has made the claim for the first time in its Korean language version of its latest defense report. On Wednesday, South Korea's defense ministry summoned an official from the Japanese embassy and demanded that it never happen again. But the ministry itself is under fire for its slow response. As it turns out, the defense report was delivered almost 1 week ago. Japan has claimed Dokdo in its Japanese language defense report since 2005. And now to the latest on the young South Korean man who recently disappeared in Turkey. Authorities are pretty sure now that the 18-year-old voluntarily crossed the border into Syria, but say there isn't enough evidence to say he definitely went to join the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. Gwon So-ah has more.
It's been more than 10 days since a young Korean man, known only by his surname Kim, went missing in Turkey. But there's growing speculation that he may somehow be linked to the Islamic State. On Wednesday, the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency announced the results of its preliminary investigation into the disappearance, saying the 18-year-old crossed the border into Syria voluntarily. Police say there is a low chance that he was forced or kidnapped. They have not found any evidence that he is involved in the militant group, only clues of his interest. Investigators restored Kim's computer and found that as of January last year, many of Kim's key search words were related to the Islamic State. He also expressed his interest in IS on social networking services. Local Korean news channel YTN reported that Kim had left a message for his family before embarking on his trip, which says joined IS. Although grammatically incorrect, it suggests he was telling his parents he was going to join the group. The 18-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown following his disappearance on January 10th from the Turkish border city of Kilis. If he is found to have joined the Islamic State, he will be the first known Korean to have done so. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And as we just saw there, social networking services like Twitter can help terrorist organizations spread their message and connect with the world and disillusioned individuals, like perhaps that young Korean man who may have joined Islamic State. And that's prompted Korea's censorship body to crack down on terror-related information on SNS sites. The Korea Communications Standards Commission says it plans to block access on SNS services to information on imitating terrorist acts or joining terrorist groups like Islamic State. The agency is going to meet on this Thursday to try and thrash out an urgent bill on the matter.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, government ministries and agencies have been laying out their action plans for 2015 to President Park Geun-hye all this week. On Wednesday, it was the Safety and Legal-related Ministry's turn. In light of last April's tragic ferry sinking and the botched response to it, making Korea a safer country is the government's top priority this year. Chae Sun reports.
The head of the new safety ministry, established in the aftermath of last year's deadly ferry accident, has vowed to ensure a fast response to major crises in the nation. A special rescue team will be formed to reach an accident or disaster site anywhere in the country within 30 minutes on land and an hour by sea. A lax response to the sinking of the Seoul ferry last April was largely blamed for the deaths of more than 300 passengers. Safety Minister Park In-young said he will bolster the ministry's fire service and Coast Guard rescue operations and hold more public servants accountable for laxity. Inspections of public facilities will be carried out annually, and safety education will be offered to all Koreans, from toddlers to the elderly. The safety minister also talked about turning a problem into an opportunity by expanding the use of information and communications technology and safety management and creating jobs in new areas such as safety consulting and monitoring. Saying that government reform is the very beginning of all reforms, the administration minister said he will integrate overlapping public projects and services to more efficiently cater to the needs of the public. Public servants will be encouraged to initiate and innovate through incentives, and those involved in corruption will face dire consequences.
We plan to expand bonuses for good performance for the salaried positions. It's a step towards implementing a performance-based system in public service.
And to encourage greater specialization in public service, government employees will be limited to the number of times they can be transferred from one ministry to another, and more positions will be open to experts from the private sector. Chae Sun, Arirang News.
The government's top legal officials have also been handing over their plans to the president. They have pledged to do all they can to root out crime, especially in the wake of some horrifying cases of child abuse that have come to light in recent weeks. Park Ji-won reports.
Korea's Ministry of Justice has stressed that a firm legal foundation has to underpin the government's plans for structural reform. Laying of his ministry's plans for 2015 to President Park Geun-hye on Wednesday, Justice Minister Hwang Kyo-won focused on ways to re-establish law and order, build a law-abiding society, and eradicate deep-rooted crimes. The ministry says the protection of Korea's constitutional values are at the core of attempts to maintain and strengthen law and order. It says pro-North Korean campaigns and illegal protests will be subject to stricter crackdowns. The Justice Ministry will also strengthen legal education for young people and ordinary citizens in conjunction with the Education Ministry to foster a more law-abiding society. The ministry will also focus on crime prevention. A top priority is tackling child abuse, a reflection of the public's fury over recent child abuse cases. The government plans to inspect every daycare center and build a stronger network with the police to swiftly respond to abuse cases. Sex crimes, as well as domestic and school violence, and crimes related to the unsanitary management of food are other areas the ministry has vowed to stamp out. The government also aims to increase support for the victims of crime. The government is also going to strengthen its pro bono legal services in a joint effort with Korea Legal Aid Corporation. The Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission of Korea stresses that rooting out corruption and raising the level of social trust is key to achieving the government's lofty goals. It vowed a swift passage of comprehensive anti-corruption bill that's currently pending at the National Assembly. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The world's most powerful politicians and business leaders are in Switzerland for the 45th edition of the Davos World Economic Forum, where the emphasis is on investment and structural reforms to try and secure growth. Addressing the forum on Wednesday, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi said it's time to stress the importance of growth rather than austerity measures. He also urged the European Central Bank to find a new investment and growth-orientated direction to revive a stagnant Europe. Alex Weber, who is the former head of Germany's Bundesbank and current chairman of UBS, said countries needed to take tough decisions on jobs and pensions, and that more action was needed to centralize national powers across the Eurozone. President and founder of the annual forum, Klaus Schwab, also said it was important that countries coordinate their policies to stimulate growth. Now, over the past few days, we've been taking a look at Korea's burgeoning startup industry, but today we're going to turn our focus to Israel, a relatively small country in terms of size and population, but a world leader when it comes to the environment for startups. So, what can Korea learn from Israel? Connie Kim takes a look.
Israel has over 60 IT startups listed on the Nasdaq. That's more than the combined total number of startups from Europe, China, Japan, and Korea. And this comes on the back of the country's strong R&D gene. Scientists and technicians per capita in Israel are nearly double those in the U.S., helping Israel's innovative city, Tel Aviv, become the second best startup ecosystem in the world after California's Silicon Valley. Experts say the country's unique chutzpah culture, or pioneer spirit, also plays an important role in creating venture capital buzz. But helping to weave these elements together is the government. Through seed investments, it's been supporting the core technology of startups, hard and costly to build up, but regarded as critical for development.
They are heavily investing in this very, very risky stage where usually commercial organizations are quite averse to investing in this area.
Israel's first venture capital firm was established in the mid-1980s. By 1993, the government collaborated with the private sector to form Yozma, one of the country's largest venture capital funds. Luring in foreign venture capitalists by offering tax incentives and doubling investment through a government matching program, Yozma managed over $220 million in its three funds.
Israel's venture capital funds take bold steps in making risky investments, but that's not the case in Korea, where investors have high expectations on retrieving the money they put in.
Creating a favorable environment for new businesses, Yozma also helped to connect and oversee the acquisition of local startups by global corporations such as Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, and Cisco. In 2013, the acquisitions and IPOs of Israeli companies far exceeded $6 billion, while startups totaled more than $2 billion in venture funding. With the right conditions to flourish, market watchers say there's a good chance the next Facebook or Google will emerge from Israel. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, Korean nationals residing overseas will be able to get their resident registration cards reissued from this Thursday. Up until now, a Korean person's resident registration, or ID number essentially, was cancelled after they'd obtained permanent resident status in another country. Without this number, it's much more difficult and time-consuming to make financial transactions or do any kind of administrative work in Korea. Because of this, the government says it will issue ID cards to permanent overseas residents if they plan on staying in Korea for more than 30 days. Also, from today, those who will obtain overseas residency will be allowed to keep their Korean ID number. The government expects some 110,000 people to apply for the renewed registration. OK, well, it's time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. Well, he talked about taxes, terror, and diplomacy. During his much-awaited State of the Union address on Tuesday, U.S. President Barack Obama laid out his plans to help the middle class and to protect the country from terrorist attacks. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama used his annual State of the Union address to turn the page from an era of terror and recession to one of expanding economic opportunity. Emphasizing that the country's economy is growing and creating jobs at the fastest pace since 1999, he started his speech by calling on Congress to join him in enacting his so-called middle-class economics policy. He pledged to help middle-class families afford child care, college, and health care by collecting more tax from high-income earners and large financial institutions. Speaking to a room full of more Republicans than Democrats for the first time during his term, he said helping hard-working families make ends meet will lead to a stronger economy in the years to come. Obama also discussed the foreign policy issues.
We stand united with people around the world who've been targeted by terrorists, from a school in Pakistan to the streets of Paris. We will continue to hunt down terrorists and dismantle their networks, and we reserve the right to act unilaterally, as we have done relentlessly since I took office, to take out terrorists who pose a direct threat to us and our allies.
Stressing that his first duty as commander-in-chief is to defend the country, he asked Congress to pass legislation granting him authorization to fund the ongoing battle against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. He also addressed efforts to eradicate Ebola in West Africa and plans to normalize relations with Cuba. In addition, he urged Congress to pass new cybersecurity legislation in the wake of the cyber attack on Sony Pictures, which the administration blames on North Korea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
News now. It appears a tentative deal has been reached between the president of Yemen and Houthi rebels just hours ago. The Shiite group has agreed to pull back from the presidential palace and residence, as well as other locations, in exchange for more power outlined in a new constitution. Outside the presidential residence, where President Abd Rabbu Mansur Hadi is believed to be, Houthi gunmen replaced presidential guards. Rebels have stopped short of toppling President Hadi, even as they managed checkpoints and streets in near total control of the capital of Sana'a. Yemen's official Saba news agency said President Saadi has agreed to specify Yemen as a federal state. The Arabic country had been ridden with sectarian and ethnic challenges, enabling groups like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to expand its operations. President Hadi took office in 2012 with support from Saudi Arabia and the U.S. And the leader of Germany's anti-Islamization movement has stepped down after a picture of him dressed up as Hitler appeared on the front pages of many newspapers. The spokesman for Patriotic Europeans Against the Islamization of the West, better known as Pegida, tried to play down the photos as a joke as Lutz Bachmann apologized for what he called ill-considered remarks. He had called refugees scumbags, also published in the dailies. The resignation came just ahead of a rally attended by several thousand in Leipzig on Wednesday. Protesters identifying with Pegida's anti-Islamization cause, however, were outnumbered by a counter-demonstration as thousands of police stood nearby.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, as the organizing committee got the good news that the Korean government is willing to fully back the committee. Now, with the organizing committee lacking the proper funding to fully prepare for the 2018 Winter Games, the Korean government has stepped up to help them financially. An unnamed government official stated that the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games will be funded like the 1988 Seoul Summer Games, adding that the organizing committee chief Cho Yang-ho will be given more power to run the committee. Now, good news for the organizing committee with roughly 3 years to go until the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang. 3 goals, 3 wins, and now the Korean national football team is hoping to make it win number 4 during the 2015 Asian Cup, as they're set to face off against Uzbekistan later today during the quarterfinals. Now, with the 69th ranked Korea set to face off against the 71st ranked Uzbekistan, Korea does have a better record at 8 wins, 2 draws, and only 1 loss in the 11 times that they faced each other. But Uzbekistan looks confident going into the quarterfinals despite finishing second in Group B. Now, in a press conference on Wednesday, Korea's Son Heung-min made it clear once again that they're here to win the title, as manager Uli Stilike is set to start him in this match. Now, the new year is over 3 weeks old, yet there are awards still being given out for the 2014 season, just like the International Shooting Sport Federation's Player of the Year honors, which was given to Korea's Kim Jong-un. Now, the 36-year-old who missed out on another individual gold during the 2014 Asian Games in Incheon still had an incredible 2014 season, including 2 gold medals during the 2014 World Championships. He also broke a 34-year-old world record in the 50-meter event and found himself at the top of the world rankings in both the 50-meter and the 10-meter category. Meanwhile, he's set to prepare for the 2016 Rio Summer Games starting next month at the Jincheon Athletes Village. Now, the KBL has done a lot in trying to improve the league, and starting this year, they added the KBL D-League, or the Developmental League. And with that, the first champion in the D-League was crowned on Wednesday. And no surprise here, the powerhouses when it comes to amateur league, Sangmu, the military team, dominated the Orions in the best-of-3 series 82-57 to claim the first D-League championship. Now, despite the Orions changing up the lineup in Game 2, Sangmu took control early with a barrage of threes and closed it off by out-rebounding them in the second half of the game. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. People in parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces will need to be extra careful this morning. Over 10 centimeters of heavy snow fell overnight, and still it's snowing in some parts, but it should gradually let up as the morning goes on. In the meantime, the upper provinces, including here in Seoul, will enjoy early spring-like conditions today under a good amount of sunshine. It will be sunnier than yesterday, with high peaking to a tad higher today, but chillier down south. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the low in Seoul is kicking off at the freezing mark this morning, but the current reading is at about 1. Then the daytime high will peak to 7, while Gwangju and Busan will rise to 6 and 8, respectively. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 8, and Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 6 and 4, respectively. That's all for now. Back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather. And that really does do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a great day and stay tuned to Arirang. Goodbye.